So, welcome. This is a week after the Meghan and Harry interview with Oprah, and the three ladies are back together to discuss what we thought about the interview and the fallout since. The interview was shown in America on the 7th of March and in England on the 8th of March. But from the time it was shown in America, the next morning, there was pandemonium in the press. TV, radio, newspaper, and it hadn't even been shown in the UK yet, but we seem to be getting all the details through. Now, we watched it, and we are going to give our opinions on what we thought of the interview and also about the fallout afterwards. So I'm going to go around the room, so to speak, and we're going to talk about first what we thought were the two things that stood out for us during the interview. What were the two biggest things that stood out for us as individuals during the interview? Shall we start with you, Eve?
Yes, okay. I think the two biggest things, one's a general comment and then one more specific, really. My general comment was, I didn't really understand why America had exploded and Britain had exploded about this interview, because I didn't actually think that it was as sensational as it was billed or as sensational as the press was making out, because probably being a woman of colour and having been through the kind of things that Meghan was talking about, most of the things about how she'd been received, and what she'd been through, it was almost like, I get it. And I guess really in this country, because it was about the royal family, that's probably why there was this explosion of, you can't say those things about the Queen, you can't say those things about the royal family, how dare she open her mouth and say a word, that's what they were thinking. But I was just thinking, I understand what you're saying. I absolutely understand what you're saying. So, this whole thing of everybody getting explosive over here and explosive over there in America, as if in America they think that the royal family are some exemplars of everything, of behaviour and decorum, all the rest of it. Where, go back in the history of that family, there's a lot of scandal and sensation going back many, many, many centuries. So yes, but I just thought to myself, I understand what she's saying and can see where she's coming from, and I felt a lot of empathy for her and for Harry. The other thing I think that came out of it, and some people, I think from the American side and maybe a bit of the English side, is said, about the way that Oprah actually, handled Meghan and handled Harry in that particular interview. And what came over to me was that she did it in a gentle, probing way, rather than digging for or mining for gold or gossip and, sensations. Though you can see at some point she was quite surprised at things that Meghan had said. But I thought she handled it in a very caring kind of way. And I guess from the comments I've been hearing over here and over from America and seeing from America, they probably thought that she'd go in with a hammer and chisel and really get to the depth of it and, expose them in some kind of way. But that sort of kindness, I thought, made Meghan a bit more talkative, I think, and Harry feel a bit more comfortable to actually talk and say, this is what happened. So that's just my general view on the two things that were the biggest thing I took away from the actual interview itself and how it was handled.
Okay, thank you. Victoria.
Oh, hi everybody. Glad to be back again for Loose Women #2. with a black cast, which I think is quite good. So I think the first thing for me was naiveness. I think there was an element of naiveness, and I think that came across. That's one of the things I took away from it. The second thing I think was entwined. I think naiveness linked with pain, and there was a lot of pain which came out of that. But I also want to say is the naiveness linked back to, I want to make this point, which links back to naiveness, which is the difference of how racism is portrayed within the US and how it is portrayed within the UK. And I'm hoping that we'll come back to that at some stage. And I think those were the things which came out from the interview for me the big one was naiveness, linked to the difference regarding how racism is unpacked in the US and how it is distinguished, or how it develops or manifests itself within the UK. And then the other part which fits across of it all is pain. So that's what I want to say to those two things you asked about.
Okay. For me, the two biggest areas that really stood out for me was one when Meghan said that she didn't want to live anymore. When she said that she was having suicidal feelings, and that when she tried to get help from inside the family, it was refused, saying it wouldn't look good on the institution. So all of a sudden, the institution was more important than someone else's life. And at least she had her husband and her and Diana's best friend to speak to, and perhaps others of her friends whom she might also have confided in. You know, so she had people around who could help to support her. But for her to say that, you know, it takes a particular kind of strength and courage to admit at that time you were weak and you actually wanted to end your life. Because, you know, we've always looked at her as a, you know, tower of strength. And knowing that, yes, there might have been things going on behind the scenes, but we did not know to what extent. The other thing that shocked me was her saying that the story about her making Kate cry before her wedding was actually the other way around. It was Kate that made her cry. And that shocked me because it's a lie that has been perpetuated from since shortly after the wedding. And nobody thought to put that right. And she felt she couldn't put it right because, as she says later on in the interview, she was silenced. And it just goes to show how sometimes you can't take for granted what people are saying in the press. And I think we kind of know that anyway, that there's a lot of lies in the press. But to see that this is a big blatant lie, which is being reported by practically all the news media, and Kate, and you called it out right last time, Eve, you called her name, you called that Kate out, and you said, you know, you don't trust her. You just felt that there was something that, you know, she obviously might have felt towards Meghan when Meghan came on the scene. And sure enough, we have the situation where there was an argument, or maybe it could have been a misunderstanding, and then Meghan cried. We don't know if perhaps Kate did cry later on. We have no idea. But the point is, the story from the beginning was given from a different point of view. And it's just sad to see. I think that is a tip of the iceberg in terms of stories which are coming out about Meghan, which are false, and all the positive PR that was coming out was geared towards other members of the family and not towards Meghan and Harry, which is very sad because while you're doing that, you're throwing your own grandson, your own son, brother, you know, cousin, you're throwing him under the bus as well. And I must say, I still can't quite understand that. What is the logic for that? And why is there no explanation for that?
Can I just say something quickly, Dawn, to that first point you made? Just very quickly, I wanted to say, it's linked into that before the interview took place, and we heard, about the issue around Meghan being accused of bullying. The interview was coming, then there was this thing, oh, Meghan's been accused of bullying. I remember when I was here and I was just going to the kitchen, and it's about empathy, really. As I was going to my kitchen, I remember saying out loud, because somehow I put myself in Meghan's place with, I'm going to do an interview and expose what I've gone through. And all of a sudden now, this bullying aspect comes up. Where did that come from? And I literally said out loud, I know she couldn't hear me, I literally said, Meghan, please don't harm yourself over this thing. Because I thought, if that was me, and I'm going to tell what I'm going through, and all of a sudden, from the firm, there comes this, oh, Meghan was a bully and we're going to investigate. When she stood up herself against those kinds of things, against, bullying and so forth, and that's what they throw at you. I just thought, that would make me lose my mind. I'd be like, really, you're coming from that aspect? And I just said it aloud, do not harm yourself. don't harm yourself. So when she actually said in her interview, she'd had those feelings about when she was in there, I thought, people don't understand what you can do to others by what you say in your words. And I know that we'll come to certain topics later, which about a certain individual who likes to talk about freedom of speech. But your words, just like the Bible says, there's life or death in your words. When you be careful what you say and you're careful what you put out there, you can't just say whatever you like because you think you can and call it freedom of speech. But we'll come back to that later. But I just wanted to say, empathizing. And I thought, that's what I said out loud. But not knowing what she'd been through. But I thought, if that was me, that would just spin me, And I just thought I'd just mention that because it matches in terms of something you were saying for your first point.
Okay.
It's just sad and pain, yeah, as Victoria says. I'm thinking about it now, and honestly, I'm tearing up because a lot of pain that's still going on. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Still going on. Yeah.
What do you feel about the way the royal family has handled the situation since the interview? Victoria, can we start with you?
Yeah, of course. Well, that's an interesting question. I think they've handled it in the way that you'd expect them to handle it, which is that they're not going to put their dirty washing out into the whole public. I think the interesting part which I saw, excuse me, I think something which I was sent, I think it was yesterday or the day before, from LBS or LV, whatever it is, London, the radio station. I don't really listen to it. LBC. Yeah, and I don't really listen to it. But he read something out. Is it Jamie or whatever his name is? I don't even know who he is, but it's the guy
James.
who presents. Yes.
Yeah,
he read something out which I thought was extremely interesting, and it was about 3 minutes long, and it was somebody had written a statement which connected to Meghan and Harry, and really about the top of the triangle. I don't know if you've seen it, about the top of the triangle, the tip of the triangle, and really in the long and the short of it really is that she would never be accepted because she is not blood, and there's no place for that. But you need to, if you can, have a look at that. That would be very helpful. But going back to the question, I mentioned that because it's part of the context. Going back to the question, I think they've done what they would normally do, which is to keep it in the house. But if you ask me a different question, which is, what do I think about the institution and how the institution has handled it? I think that's a different way, because there's a lot of people which seep out of the institution, which benefit from the royal family. And they really don't have much of a choice. The royal family are kind of part of the inner circle, but the actually institution is the powerhouse. And I think the way they've handled it, I think it could have been worse. But the Queen, of course, has told them that it's got to be within. They're going to look after it and look after it privately themselves. It was a bit and I'm not surprised, but what William mentioned this week, that the royal family is not racist and it's more complex than that. So I thought, okay, yeah, well, we know it's more complex than that. Many of us who understand the complexities of it. So they're my comments, and these are just my comments, my opinion. I have no facts or anything like that. I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of that as well.
Okay, Eve?
There's a wry smile on my face when Victoria mentioned Prince William. Prince William, who's the brother of Harry. Let's just say that. Prince William, the brother of Harry. If that's what, I picked up from the media that one little sentence that was said about, the royal family is not racist. He may have said many other things, but I haven't seen anything else reported back. One, it's the driest thing I've ever heard about a situation where, because normally what people say when they are racist is like, I'm not a racist, a lot of my friends are black. That's what we remember being said, of old. That's the kind of thing. And to me, I'm sorry, Prince William, future king, that is what it's smacked of. Now, whether or not he was told, because obviously these aides and courtiers, they tell you things, they've got the comms, they've got all the rest of it. You can't say X, you can't say Y. What I didn't understand from that would be, why didn't William say, yes, I know there was an interview, I've heard bits of it, And I'm really sorry to hear the pain that my brother and his wife have experienced and that they've shared, because that in itself, you know, touched me. Because that's your relative, that's your brother, grown up scared, you've been through a lot of pain, you've been through loss. I didn't understand, say, when you say the royal family is not racist. So I'm going to say that's what he was told to say. I'm going to be charitable and say that's what he was told to say, and he said it. So in typical royal family fashion, and you're right, Victoria, the people that surround them, it was a nothing. I'll call it a nothing. That's really what they said. And in this situation, it wasn't a nothing situation for the royal family and their comms and all the rest of it. It couldn't be a nothing. It couldn't be a nothing when you see Harry and Meghan, Prince Harry and Meghan, you know, bare their heart and their hurt. And also when they talked about Archie and his protection. Archie's royal. How can Archie be royal and there's no protection for him? That in itself was like a big thing. But again, with what we're getting from the royal family, it's like that whole stiff upper lip thing, we don't really want to talk about it. Let's not talk about these things. Let's move on. But yet the brickbats keep coming against Meghan, particularly not so much Harry, but they're allowing the media to have a frenzy. Yeah, frenzy. And I don't see them putting stop to it, because it serves their purpose right now as a veneer over what's going on. But I'm not too surprised, though. Nothing they did. It would have shocked me if they showed empathy, but they didn't, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I was disappointed with the palace's response, the 3-line response, especially when they said recollections may vary, which means you are basically doubting what is being said. You know, I'm also surprised that they have basically put a placeholder as if to say, okay, we might come back to you later on with more, but this is all we're saying for now. And they're hoping that that's going to shut up the press and shut up everyone else. I was disappointed at that, because if somebody tells you that they're hurting, and they're hurting because of your action, shouldn't your first response be to apologize and say that you're going to work on finding a solution if perhaps there was a misunderstanding? You know, many people had to brush off a situation by saying, yes, it was a misunderstanding, but they were going to work towards a solution. I don't feel that the statement did that. And I still think that the palace should make an apology for what has happened. And there are multiple things they need to apologize for. You know, you only have to listen to the interview and you could come up with a list of 10 things they should apologize for.
At least.
Yeah, absolutely. And they should say how they're going to make things better. They should make restitution. They should make up for the pain and the hurt that they've caused, not just to Harry and Meghan, I must say, but to the Black community, to the British community, some of whom are actually quite upset about it. We hear a lot about the people who are making their comments and saying, oh yeah, Harry and Meghan are terrible, oh, we don't like them. And a lot of them are mainly the Daily Mail readers. You know, the vast majority of people in this country, and certainly abroad, are very much in the camp of Harry and Meghan. So how are you as an institution therefore going to say that some of these things that happen should never have happened and they will never happen again, and this is how we're going to make up for it? This is what we want to see. And if we have people in the Commonwealth who are accepting this and say, no, yeah, this is fine, it's just all part of the course, it should not be part of the course. We're not putting up with these things anymore. Look at what's happening with the death of the lady Sarah, who's been killed by, you know, a policeman, for goodness sake, you know, and then they're starting to talk about the fact that women are not feeling safe walking on the streets. They're trying to do something about it. The whole Me Too movement was about doing something about this. And we cannot accept this as just another interview. Oh, they're just talking. Let's just brush it under the carpet. Let's forget about it. It's got to be something that causes change. And that's what I feel that Harry and Meghan's aim was. They know what they went through, and okay, they're not looking to go back and come back into the royal family and, you know, everything is as it was. They're looking that change happens. And I don't feel that the royal family understands that yet, or maybe they're kicking that down the long curb, trying to think of, okay, let's get our PR involved. How can we paper over the cracks rather than cause real change? It's not good enough. And I wasn't happy with that response. And I really think that we ought to be pressing for more. We ought to be pressing for change. And the British population are now being led down a garden path by certain of the press, who's starting to feed out stories that, oh, the UK is very unhappy, they're very unpopular, they're trying to, what was it that one of the papers said? They've got a 14-page pullout to prove that Harry and Meghan were not telling the truth. I mean, how terrible is that? How awful is that? Which moves us on to the press response, by the way. You know, I think initially the press was incredulous and shocked, but then they've started going down this road of defense of the monarchy. What do you think?
I don't think, how does the monarchy need defending? I mean, we'll come to another particular person who thinks that he's a knight in shining armor or something, but how can the monarchy need defending? They don't need defending.
Can I just come in there just for a second? Just no, don't apologize, because I've spoken out of turn, but I just wanted to just pick up something which Dawn mentioned, actually, because one could argue that what's taken place with what's happened now, Meghan and Harry have presented their case. Now, leaving that where it is and moving on to something else in relation to institutional racism. Institutional racism, as we know, many of us know, once the person who feels that it's taken place to them and presents their case, the machine then starts, like it's already started with them, to defend themselves. So for me, it was just, well, this is just a part of the process. They present their case, and then the mechanisms come into play to defend that they are not racist because X, Y, and Z. Sorry, Eva, I'll let you carry on. But I just wanted to say that because it is part of the wider. Yes. And then in the end, if you're depending how mentally strong you are, you could end up in a psychiatric unit, because that's where we end up in the UK. Or you could end up with losing your job completely because they found that, of course, racism doesn't exist here.
because you spoke out, and how dare you not be silent? I think the one big thing as well, Victor and Dawn, and honestly, it's not the elephant in the room. It's the ridiculousness in the situation. That's what it really is. Harry is part of the monarchy. I'll say it quietly, because it's like, you know, we should be saying this. He's actually speaking out against his own. He's in the monarchy, not because you've been stripped of your Duchess and Duke thing. Doesn't stop making you royal. You're still a prince. But the fact is, he's speaking up. He's not turning to his wife and saying, she's talking rubbish, you know, and I've told her not to say anything. He's defending his family. He's defending his wife. He knows what's happening. And also, an incident that he talked about skin color of the baby was said to him. He shared it with her. And then she shared it and then said, I'm not going to say who it is. And people baying to know who it is. It's like, what's got to do with you who it is? The fact that it happened, he's sharing it. But the fact of the matter is, Harry is the monarchy. Now, I think the press actually forget that. And you know whose fault that is? I'm going to call it out. It's the Queen's fault. And I'll tell you why it's the Queen's fault. Because I'm rounding what you're asking about, and the press. The press think they can go in on Harry, go in on Meghan, and say they're liars, and how dare you say these things about the Queen, forgetting that Harry is the Queen's grandson, yeah? But they haven't forgotten that. It's that what the firm and what the Queen has done is hung her own grandchild out to dry and put him at the mercy of a merciless press. That's what she's done. But what she's done, stripping of this, and they can't strip him of anything without the Queen's permission. Stripping of this, stripping of that, and all this kind of thing, all this rhetoric and whatever. Now you've left him that. But the thing is, he's still royal. He's part of the monarchy. He's in line to the throne. But what's happened now, the press don't see that. What they see is that, well, the Queen allowed this to happen. They've stripped them, so they're fair game. And that's what's unfair, and that's what is disgusting, and that's what's unconscionable about what's going on. Not only just speaking out and speaking their truth, what do they call that phrase? Speaking truth to power. That only works if you do it silently in your house. But when you want to speak it out publicly, your truth to power, power was going to get out their Uzi and shut you down. That's what they're doing. The verbal Uzi comes out, and also this silence is very passive aggressive. You know, I'm not going to say anything. But what you're really saying, carry on, press, carry on, UK press, tear them down, you know, show them. Where's the love in that from being a loving grandmother to see your son, your grandson going through that pain, and his wife, and he's also talking about his mental health, and you come back with no comment. And so that no comment has put them at the mercy of the UK press. I also saw a little piece from Fox News, you know, when they were saying that, oh, they're rich. You know, they're sitting there moaning and complaining they're rich. Do you know how much money his dead mother left him? All that kind of thing. Their house is 40 million. So what? Are you saying rich people who are BAME or whatever don't suffer racism? That's what they're trying to say. You're rich, so what's your problem? The money doesn't solve anything. Else, rich people would never kill themselves. Look at the Getty family. Suicide and all kinds of things happening. They were the richest people in the world, and they're not looking at that. And I come back, and I'm sorry, Queenie. I call her Queenie because I always have a lot of affection for her when I see her going around the world. But in now, the frenzy against Harry and Meghan, because she could shut this down. And somewhere somebody said something like that, and I concur. So that makes me really sad because I'm a mother. If that was my child, I would move heaven and earth to try and help them. But it's that silence, that tacit kind of, well, we're going to deal with this privately. Do not come with that. I'm going to say BS, can I? Don't come with that BS. Don't come with that. That is chilling, that is cold. And that whole thing that the press is doing now, you are to blame. Queen Elizabeth II. Thank you.
Victoria, sound.
Yep, sorry. I think I've said what I wanted to say, actually, which is that the press is really the defender, and that's their position. And we also have to remember the silent contract they have with the royal family and how that plays itself out. So they have this silent contract that if they do certain things, there is a kind of a, not explicit, but there is a contract which they abide by between the two of them. So the press are the press, and they've done what they needed to do because they're acting as the defender. Now you can help me with the facts because I can see the person who was going to host one of the journalists' dinners, and she stepped down, hasn't she, because of one of the key people for the press, the Association of Press, basically was one of the also people who said that they were concerned that some of the facts weren't quite right. And so the host they had, was it Patricia, somebody? Does anybody know? Can anybody correct me on that?
I can't remember her name, but yeah, it's a black woman. I saw her picture.
Yeah.
Charlene White, I think.
It was Charlene White, that's it, Charlene White. She's just stepped down and said, I think you need to get somebody who reflects your views. So I think that just about sums it up. You know, you get somebody who reflects your views. Yeah.
I think the interesting thing is that even in the interview, Harry said that the palace is scared of the press. The royal family is scared of the press. You know, they have this arrangement where, you know, we look after them, you know, and then they look after us.
Yeah.
And Harry didn't
silent contract. Silent contract. Yeah.
Harry didn't seem keen to play that game, you know. And one of the first things that they said when they were stepping back from the royal family was that they weren't going to be reporting to the press corps. Daily ritual, apparently. They weren't going to be doing that anymore. Because I suppose they found that whatever was being reported from their side, from the Sussex household, was either not being relayed to the public or being changed, or deliberate lies were being put in the place of what Harry and Meghan wanted to get across, and they just felt they couldn't trust them, and you can see why, you know. So the press somehow have become this army on behalf of the palace. But having said that, I can't even say it's all about race, because they did this to Diana and they did this to Fergie at one point too. You know, when they are ready to latch on to somebody and to try and destroy them with a lot of negative press, they will do it and keep doing it. And I feel that there needs to be some law against the press abuse that we are seeing, the press harassment that we're seeing, and the press are just allowed to get away with it. There needs to be a law against it. Something needs to be done.
I think there's laws about these things. There's libel laws, there's all kinds of laws. But the fact is that the monarchy is a whole different beast. And I think that's why a lot of people in the US don't understand that. And if I post things, I say you have to understand the context of the royal family and the UK. But one thing I will sound out right here, Dawn, is what you were saying about being scared of the firm being scared of. I think they're scared of the PR that the media puts across for them. But shouldn't they be a little bit more concerned about the public? Because we pay for a whole heap of what they actually get. And what was interesting during lockdown is that I didn't know there was a law which says if the Queen doesn't get her normal income at the level it should be, there's a actual law in place which says it comes from public money. Our taxes are used to bail her out. And she had a bailout, a big, huge, massive bailout. That's a fact. And I didn't know there was any such law. So shouldn't she be a bit worried about the people in this country and what they think of what's going on, rather than pandering to the press? Because there are questions that have not been answered, and their position seems to be, well, we're not going to answer it, or we're going to let our baying pack of wolves answer it, and that's not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. But I just wanted to add that into what you were saying, Dawn. It should be more concerned about what the UK people, including non-white people in the UK, think, rather than the press.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. A name that I'm loath to say.
Don't say it.
But I do feel that we need to discuss it.
Okay.
Morgan.
Yes.
Okay.
Go on, ladies. Go on, ladies.
I'm happy to start. I haven't got much to say, but happy to start. So, and I may be popular, not unpopular, but I he's not somebody I listen to, put it that way. But I think there is when they say a female has been scorned, I think he's been scorned. I think he was, I believe, and I have no idea, and I'm just making an assumption here, but I think something happened before Meghan met Prince Harry, which Piers Morgan did speak about, that they went out for dinner and etc., and either he, her, or whatever it was, declined on whatever offer was up on the table. And I think when he knew that she was with Prince Harry, I think perhaps they thought that they could have a good conversation or whatever it was. But Meghan got rid of many of the people who she'd had conversations with, relationships with, and it was like a clean slate. So and I think he's quite hurt about whatever took place between the two of them, and perhaps he thought he could have a conversation, and I think that's about him. But that was on offer for many months, a couple of years actually. He's been bitter and twisted about whatever took place. But yeah, I really don't have much to say about him, but I don't, this is why I really think that there is something which Meghan's not saying about that. I don't believe every single thing in that particular piece of information at all. I think there's always two sides to something, and I don't think everybody's listening to some of his side. And he did say something way back in 2000 and whatever it was, 18, 19, whatever, he was quite honest about it then. So I think there more likely is something there Not I'm saying that they had anything intimate or anything, but I think there was more in relation to feelings or whatever it was, which he hasn't dealt with. But that's all I want to say about that particular person.
Well, you know, Victoria, carrying on from what you were saying there. Well, he's talked about it. He said exactly what's happened, and I've seen, and I didn't know before last week because I don't watch Good Morning Britain for donkey's years. But because someone had put on Facebook, you know, Good Morning Britain now, you know, tune in now. So I was up and I thought, I'll tune in. And when I tuned in, I can tell you, ladies, inside of me just went cold, top to bottom. The way he was so vile, the anger, the shouting. And it was like he was in his front room. It wasn't like he was a presenter. And then, you know, got Dr. Charlotte trying to tell him something, you know, and he's going on. And then his pronouncement where he said, you know, everything she's saying is lies, and that's what I say. It's like, what is this coming from? What's wrong with this guy? Now backtrack a bit. What things that you're saying, Victoria. I've seen when he spoke with James Corden, and so did millions of people in America who ever watched that show. They showed that clip. And what Alex Berry said was correct. I agree with Alex. If I want to cut you off, I can cut you off. What does it have to be a little water with? She met Harry, you know, why would she still stay in touch with somebody necessary? He was probably wasn't even a close friend. I don't know what he did for her, but these are the words that I heard him say to James Corden, and the look on his face. You know, she went somewhere. I was the one who told her to go to whatever party it was or gave her the invitation, and she went there. He expected something quid pro quo in return. But also, he said, and his face was like, I liked her a lot. And you know, guys, you see that kind of look, I liked her a lot. Well, it wasn't reciprocated. And that's Alex Berford rightly said, if she wants to cut you off, that's her right to do that. She didn't owe you anything but this behavior. And I thought, oh, it makes sense. Because this is what I called him, and I put it on Facebook, I put a comment, and I said, he's a virtual stalker, because obviously he's not been in their presence, but he's a virtual stalker, and ITV, shame on you, you've given him a platform to harass, harangue, take things, say things that he wants to say to a mass audience, which is love. He soaked it up. Because that's what stalkers do. They find everything they can say about you. And if they want to sue me, they can do that. But the fact is, that's how he's behaving. And he was allowed to behave that way until he went OTT. And when I switched on and heard him, I was stunned at how, it's not necessarily what he was saying, but how he was saying it, how angry he was. Aren't you supposed to be a presenter? You're supposed to be presenting the fact. You're not supposed to be using all your emotions unless someone's died or something, you got a little tear or something like that. But that anger and vile and vitriol was very unprofessional.
Yeah, I do feel a little bit uncomfortable about the word kind of virtual stalker. I think that has connotations.
That's how I term it, Victoria.
Yeah, I know, but I do feel a bit uncomfortable, and I think we have to be a little bit careful because the terminology can be we don't want somebody to come back at us too much about that. I mean, it is a terminology which has its own definition, and I don't think that I personally think that that's a bit of a difficult one to put onto somebody, and that's me personally. So I just want to put that on a record. Yeah,
I think no, that's how he behaved. It's not me saying he behaved that way. That's how he behaved, and he had the platform, and he didn't do it in person to her where she was. He did it through the TV. And I'm a person, I hadn't been watching him for ages, but as soon as I heard the way he was carrying on what he was doing, and I'm not the only person that said something soon like that, that's what his colleague was trying to say. But I mean, if you think they're going to come and sue, not you two, they can sue me directly. That's why I'm okay about it.
Okay. I am very pleased that Piers Morgan is no longer with ITV and Good Morning Britain. I think he should have gone a long time ago.
Absolutely.
For too long, he has been criticizing and nitpicking at Meghan. Anything she does, anything she says, she can't do anything right. And the fact that on the morning after he hears that she was suicidal, he should come up and say, I don't believe her, I think is absolutely disgraceful. And whether it's Meghan or anybody else who's on the TV, it could have been my neighbor next door who was on TV saying, oh, I felt so terrible. How dare you say, I don't believe her? How dare you doubt the mental health struggles that she was going through? Were you living in her house? house? Did you see what she was going through? Was she talking to you every night? How do you know that? And how dare you say you don't believe her? And really, you're leading a chorus of people across the country who are going to follow in your footsteps. That's really what you're doing. You're giving false information, right? You're actually casting aspersions against somebody who's done you nothing apart from not want to talk to you. Well, so what? It's not an offense that is, that can get you in jail, but you are actually spreading, you started this rumor that, oh, they can't be believed. And look, the rest of the press have followed on. It's just unbelievable that a responsible presenter should be doing that on the morning TV. And then when Meghan complained, she said it's not even about her, it's about other people who might be in a similar situation. You must never, ever doubt somebody when they say, I'm depressed, I'm feeling so low, I'm feeling like ending it all. Never, ever doubt them. Because what do you want them to do? To prove that's how they feel? What are you trying to say? Okay, tell me, what would you like her to do to prove it? And if that did happen, then what are you going to say? Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, maybe she was telling the truth after all. By then it's too late. It's not on. And ITV really did the right thing by calling him into the office and getting him to say that, well, trying to get him to say that he apologized, but I'm not sure telling somebody to say that you apologize for something that they actually don't really mean is a good thing. The fact that he actually walked before he was pushed, that's a good thing. And that's my feeling on that.
But he's still working. But he's still working for ITV.
Well, he's not on GMB. He's not in front of our faces every morning, and that's fine.
But he's still working for them.
Can I just add something, Dawn, to what you've just said there? Because I think it's really, really important, and this is a really important issue. And also given the timing of where we are now, and it's just one person's name, and it's Caroline Flack. And if we remember a year back from now, literally a year back from now, and the media hounding of Caroline Flack until she actually took her life. I believe that's the outcome. It was suicide. Is that what Piers Morgan wanted? Did he want to keep? And actually, if I remember what he said last week, he said he don't believe anything she said, anything. In fact, he put Harry in it too. Anything they say, it was a they, anything they say. But remember Caroline Flack and the hounding and the baying and that? The press have learned nothing. Piers Morgan has learned nothing. Did he not sit there and think in the corner of his mind, how about Caroline Flack? No, he didn't care. He had his throne, he had his audience, as you say, and he could say whatever he wanted. This freedom of speech thing that he keeps talking about, but it's not about hurting, pulling down people, as you said, trying to destroy their credibility about their own truth. Basically saying, I can't talk about myself because if you don't say something about yourself that I like, I'm going to just say it's rubbish. If I came out and said, I've been there at times, and I'll say it, I've been at times where I thought, I don't want to live anymore. I've been through a whole period of time when I was going through stresses and strains. And I even said it. I even said it in my church as I'm going through things, and this is how I felt, because I was talking my own truth. It might have been painful for people to hear, or you feel like you don't want to live anymore. I prayed not to live anymore because things were so stressful in life and I could not cope. And every day I woke up saying, why am I alive today? Because that's what I've been going through. And maybe that's why I have more empathy, that you can't just look on the veneer. And how dare anybody say you can't be going through that? What is the point of saying it? She could say, oh, everything was fine. I didn't like this, didn't like that. There was racism and that was it. But to be at a point where you thought, what's the point of me being alive? I understand that point. But for someone like him, as you say, with a vast audience, and also he's a media doyen. What is doyen? What's the word when I say? I can't tell what the male version is. But, because he's come from the media, hasn't he? Because he was, editor and all that kind of thing. Thinking with that power, as Meghan is now trying to say to him, you could use to help people, but what about those people who are going through those things? It's not about me, but those people who are going through those things, who feel they can't speak their truth because you will just rubbish it and say, it's just rubbish, I don't believe anything you say. If he said, I think the rest is lies, but I'm really sorry about her feeling that way. But the whole thing was rubbish, and that really hurt me hearing that, because you must be allowed to speak your own truth about what you're experiencing, and that's what she did. But he just, as I said, I said what I've said about him, and that's what I think about him remains. I think that ITV is culpable for a lot of things, for letting this pain her and giving him that platform to continue to do, as you said, Dawn, what he was doing for so long. Because I didn't watch the program for years. It's only when I tuned in last week I realised, you know, the position that he had in actually what he was doing. And now you're telling me it goes back years. I'm thinking, why didn't they get rid of him before
He's
now?
been doing it for years, Eve, for years.
I had no idea, which makes it even worse and very stalkerish. I finish my point up. I finish on my point.
But we've even got to consider, who are these people behind the press? I mean, I've heard that in one of the Clubhouse conversations, there was a reporter, a writer, who said that she used to work for one of the newspapers, and they wanted a story about Meghan every 30 minutes. And that story needed to come through, whether it was true or false. They weren't going to check it. They wanted the story. And if you look back at what happened last week, I think it was the Daily Express had about 40 stories about Meghan on their website, 40 stories about Meghan in one day. And this has been reported on Twitter. And then you think, why would they do this? It's about money. That's part of the reason. It's about the fact that anything about Meghan, people click on it. It's they're a cash cow, basically. And the interesting thing is that some of these newspapers, such as the Daily Mail, they might have one new item to report, one line, for instance, that Prince William said, and they'll make a whole article out of it. And the rest of the article is repetition of all the other articles. So if they have 20 articles, there's only about a tenth of any of the articles which is new. The rest is a repetition. Why are we putting up with this? Why are we putting up with this mediocre reporting, this mediocre writing, and we're thinking it's okay? And those people who are readers on the Express and Mail, who then go on to comment, you should see the amount of bile, the amount of cruelty which is in those comments. And yes, I look at them because I want to see what's going on. I want to see what they're thinking. And it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking the way some of them are writing. And you just wouldn't believe it. And I, perhaps naively, thought after the interview, oh, maybe they would be a bit kinder. Maybe they'd be a bit more sensitive. Who told me to think that? Oh, no, not so. A rocket has been placed right up there. They're going for jugular. Why would they hate a woman so much? I must say, I can't quite understand it. But there was a time when Diana was getting a lot of bile as well. But you know what? When she died, the press were all over her. Oh, she's a wonderful woman. Oh, you had whole magazines, whole newspapers dedicated to the wonderful Diana. But they forgot what they'd been saying about her 6 months prior to that, a year prior to that, 2 months prior to that. Let's hope that history really does not repeat itself.
I would say.
I also want to. Okay. I was going to say, I also want to come back to some of the thrust of this interview, which is around the institution. And if we look at the institutions and how institutions within the UK actually manifest themselves, and when we go back to the beginning where you asked about two things which we felt we wanted to say, which came out of that interview, the reason I use the words naively and also talked about the difference between what takes place in the UK and what takes place in America is because of the fact of how the UK is institutionally so very racist, and the fabric of it is part of kind of normality within life. And I'm not agreeing with that, I'm not at all. But within that itself, it's how you unpick that, because I'm sure you're coming on to that soon, is how you unpick that to provide some solutions to get things to be different. because it's when it's in the fabric, and it's in the fabric when you hear Kemi, when I can't remember her surname, who speaks in the House of Commons around some of the things she says, which are kind of, if you really unpicked it and looked at it and thinking, well, you don't really know what you're saying, but because it enables you to be part of the institution, you're saying it, even though you don't look like the people in the institution. If you look at also aspects around what took place in education or workplace or society as a whole, it's the fabric of racism which we need to unravel. Now, with the press find it, the bit which gets them in a frenzy is race and class. And because they've got gender, race, and class within an intersectional lens, they don't know how to deal with it. And that's why they're in, I would argue that they're in such a frenzy, because do they get the person on race? Do they get the person on class? Do they get the person as a woman? Whereas Black women, they don't adhere to us as women anyway, hence the kind of, like we spoke about last week, that interconnection of Kate versus Meghan, or Meghan versus Kate. So you've got all of that stuff entwining, and I was disappointed, really. And I know, and my daughters, because they asked me to watch it, my youngest one didn't watch it because she was in bed, but because she had school the next day, because we're also in the middle of young people going back to school and things like that. But I wanted to say one last thing about that, is that I was kind of disappointed, and maybe because I take it, I do analyze it at a very intellectual level, but it was the fact that, really we left the public with a very basic level of understanding. And I think there could have been a more complex and more of an analysis of what went on, because yes, we put some bite-sized stuff in from the interview, but that could have been developed further. So, for example, the aspect about the colorism and shadism. Now, for some people, that could have been the first time they'd heard of that. But for other people, that is something which takes place in many people's lives, whether it's to do with Chinese, South Korean, Indian, African, Caribbean. That is something which is talked about. But people who saw that didn't understand it. They kind of, oh, wow, is that something? No, it's something which is a discussion which takes place with a whole range of different aspects to do with colonialism. And I think that would have been helpful to have really kind of had a little bit of complexity. And Meghan would have known about that because of the fact of one drop and what it means in America. So it wasn't something which is, oh my God, in the UK that this, no, one drop that happens in America, the same thing happens here, but it's assimilation. People want to assimilate into whiteness, but you wasn't able to assimilate. And I think there's a discussion to have about that, which we've not had. And I'm not saying we're going to have that now because time is running out, but it was a fact that would have been interested in the interview. But maybe I was looking at different things, but
It would have been interested in the interview, Victoria, I agree. But also post-interviews, we're talking about the media. Why didn't they bring some of that up? At the end of the day, it was a gift really to go down and say, well, let's educate you, Britain, about what they're talking about, because they're the one that's got the mass audience. Let's educate you what they're talking about so you can understand what's
exactly.
coming from that.
But instead, Eve, what we had is Shola shouting and screaming and goodness knows what else, and some of the stuff she said.
The reason they didn't do that, Victoria, which I was going to say before you spoke, but sorry, I just want to say, but it adds in anyway, is two things I'll say. Two things are why they're in a frenzy. Number one, the press is very misogynist. It still is. A guy does something, oh, look at him, he's a lad. Woman does something shocking, horrible. Look at her. And all the epitaphs about, in terms of, expletives, come out about her. That's what she is. They still carry on with that. That goes on quite a bit. So they are misogynistic. And I'll still come back to Caroline Flack, God rest her soul, as a frenzy for her about that. But the other thing I would say as well, Dawn, is that it's a veneer. What else is going on in the royal family that's not being dealt with? What else is going on between the royal family and America that's not being dealt with? Now, I'm not going to call that person's name because everybody should know if I know who I'm talking about, and don't look it up. But I will say this to you, that whole thing to do with that member of the royal family who's not standing up, who's not going to do what they should do and doing the right thing. And somehow there's this frenzy on Meghan that everyone is staring at, while that person sits back silently, not being stripped of their titles or anything like that, sitting nice and toasty and cozy is going on and not answer it. I actually saw something online about 4 years ago, and it was talking about a member of the royal family, and there's a shocking this and a shocking that and shocking expose. It was all from the American side. And I was thinking, who are they talking about? Why hasn't this person been seen for a while? And I'm thinking, well, I know the royal family. Who are they talking about? Now we all know who it is. And 4 years ago, I didn't know they were talking about, and it is shocking. But whilst all of this is going on, and Harry and Meghan are like the bait you throw in the water to get the sharks to come around so you can view them, capture them, whatever it is, this other person is going to bed cozy at night with his lovely royal quilt on him and his royal chockies or whatever he's got, and he's fine. But yet you sit there, you person who you are, if you ever see this, you know I'm talking about you, and you see your relative going through this ripping, tearing of skin, and his wife going through all of that, and you just sit there and don't do the right thing. So really, this the misogyny bit is there, because the press is like that. But it's also like, he's not defender of the royal family. They probably think, well, if we do this, it's kind of what the royal family is trying to do, so we'll go along with it, and maybe in future we'll get an expose about something. The fact is, that's not the position of the media. It shouldn't be that. You're supposed to educate the people, not pander to the royal family. The royal family's not buying your papers or the rest of it. The country's buying it. People in the country are buying it. Why don't you educate them? Why don't you do something that's is responsible? But the thing is, we kind of know why. So unfortunately for Meghan, if she'd met Harry 10 years ago, it wouldn't be as bad as this. There would be things, but not as bad as this. But it's as bad as it is.
You don't know that then.
Well, that's my view, because this is supposed to be about my view, Victoria, and I'm giving my view. As bad as it is, that's what I think is because of somebody else in the family. And all this furore that's going on, that's so out of kilter. And as you mentioned, Dawn, it's not necessarily just to do with race. There's race in there in terms of what she went through. But you're right with Diana, the whole frenzy thing is a smokescreen. That's what I believe. And let's see what plays out in the next couple of years. But right now, that's what I believe that they're doing.
Okay. Okay, so let me just ask then, finally, are you glad they did the interview? That's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, what long-term outcomes would we like to see following the interview with Oprah? So first of all, are you glad they did the interview? I am glad.
I think the interview, whether I was glad or not, I really wasn't interested whether I was glad or not, really. I mean, I think it was a useful conversation for people to have had. I think the long-term thing for me, I think, would have been to have had an adult conversation regarding some of those complexity issues which emerged from the conversation and interview, which didn't get discussed. And so what took place was a kind of a childlike conversation which took us nowhere. But if they'd have had a conversation where they looked at different things of naivety and what that meant, or the differences of how people unpacked racism in that country, in this country, and how it plays itself out in everyday racism, then it would have been that we've moved into a different level and it was more of an adult conversation. But as it stands at the present moment, what have they gained from it? They've opened up a hornet's nest, but the difficulty, what happens in this country when they open up a hornet's nest, is what next? How do they then develop the conversation? And that's the bit which Eve was, I think, nearing to, and she can tell me off if I've said it the wrong thing, is that the expectation one could expect is that the media would then start to continue with the education and have the adult conversations in the press or with Twitter or whatever it is you want to use. So people then start to feel, okay, we're starting to understand the complexity, but that didn't happen. That didn't happen.
I hear you.
Yeah. I'm glad they did the interview. I mean, my view of it is that it was more about being cathartic for them, you know, being able to talk to someone and talk about what they went through. And yes, I do agree, Victoria, there might be some naivety in terms of the level they went to, they've probably not gone in depth enough, but, you know, it's their interview. That's what they wanted to say, they wanted to share, not in a salacious way. I'm going to end on a big bang, Dawn. And this is what I'm going to say, which is this. They had that interview with the wrong person.
Oh,
You know, who should have done that interview with them, which would have blown everything out from the UK perspective, is Piers Morgan. That's who should have done the interview with Harry and Meghan and had his questions posed to them. And I think it would have been a very different interview. And, you know, maybe he would have probed on some of the things that he thinks the British people want to know, which is really what he wants to know. But really, and maybe that's part of his ire, is that it wasn't him. So now he's not just jealous of Harry, he's jealous of Oprah too. I'll leave it there.
It's a good one.
I've got to say that I disagree, because that would have been too much of a reward for Piers Morgan for his nastiness over the years. He would have been cock of the hoop. He would have been, oh, I've got an interview with Harry and Meghan. Oh, you'd never have heard the end of it. No, I don't think he would have deserved that reward. It's possible that later on in life he might even get an interview, you know, with them. That's possible maybe after a couple of apologies and groveling, but you never know. It's possible that other people will interview them as well over time. And Victoria, alluding to what you said, I think it's possible that there are aspects of the interview which will be explored in depth at a later time. I just look at this as an introduction. They had 2 hours, they had to cover quite a lot. At some point, you know, they will go into more detail, or maybe they might not want to, I don't know, it's up to them. But certainly in terms of educating people on aspects of what was said, I think that's really quite important, and that could be quite an outcome from the interview. I think that would be really good.
Brilliant.
Yeah. All right. So I think that we've covered everything we wanted to cover. And I just want to say thank you, ladies, for giving your honest opinions.
Thank you.
Even if you might get a few people in the comments saying, no, I don't agree with that. No way. But that's okay.
After all, that is freedom of speech, right? So we'll take that too.
I mean, but that in itself is another deep
discussion.
What exactly is freedom of speech? If your freedom of speech is killing somebody, then is it really freedom of speech? You know?
That's another discussion, Dawn.
Yeah,
that's another discussion.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Nearly as good as the discussion of, are we all not wearing burqas now?
Okay.
Because we're all covering our faces, but that can be another time you get us to talk about.
I see what you say.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's lovely to talk to you, ladies.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Dawn. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Dawn. Enjoy Mother's Day. Enjoy it.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to everybody, and
take care.
Happy Mother's Day, Victoria. Happy Mother's Day.
And make sure you've got good mental health and people to talk to around you.
Oh yes.
Exactly.
Oh yes. And that might be another topic for the future.
Exactly.
Yes, indeed.
Ongoing.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Joyce Gannon, and I am the creator of Insama Chili Oil and Sauces. Insama brand was inspired by a lovely old lady called Mama Nsama. Mama Nsama made her chili oil a real labor of love. She loved making it and she loved sharing it with everyone around her. You know, everyone in the neighborhood will have maybe a liter or two of Mama Nsama's chili oil. But sadly, when Mama Nsama passed away, I didn't just want that to be the end of her story, of her legacy. So I wanted to carry on the legacy of the oil and the way she made it and the way she made it a labor of love. And so I started searching for the authentic recipe because she never passed it on before she left. But then something magical happened in 2009 and found the recipe in the magical way, and then I carried on the legacy. I started making the chili oils and I started sharing it with friends and families. So Insama didn't really start as a business. It just started as, you know, again, like I said, the labor of love, and I wanted to spread the warmth and by, you know, with everyone who also loved how good food brought families together. But in 2017, the demand for the oil had been so high from friends and family that it just evolved into a business. And from there on, we've created sauces from the oil without using additives or added sugar. We've kept them simple. We kept it clean as the original home recipe. And that is how Insama started, and that's our story. So if you want to know more about our stories or to see the full range of our products, please visit our website where you will see the inspirational story and also all the range of our products.